Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. Taming of the Shrew. By William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare wrote The Taming of the Shrew between 1590 and 1592. The plot starts with a ploy perpetrated on a drunk named Christopher Sly. Some hunters find him passed out in the alley and decide to put him in a nice home and convince him that his past as a bum was a dream and that this is his true life. The host then performs a performance to divert his attention. The Taming of the Shrew is the title of the play. The drama is about Katerina, a stubborn young woman who rejects all suitors with her caustic and biting words. She has a terrible temper and frequently attacks her sister and anybody else who gets in her way. As her rage and resentment for her sister grows, she blames her father for favoring Bianca over her. Bianca, her younger sister, is lovely and gentle. She is the polar opposite of her sister and is pursued by numerous men. All of Bianca's suitors are turned down because their father insists on their older daughter, Katerina, marrying first. Bautista has promised a huge dowry for his daughters, so the suitors for Bianca's hand look for someone greedy enough to marry Katerina and willing to take her. Hortensia, one of them, takes his friend Petruccio to meet Katerina since the man is looking for a wealthy marriage. Petruccio marries her and manages to tame Katerina through a succession of denials he claims are for her own benefit. Meanwhile, Bianca is courted by two older gentlemen, but they are unaware that another young guy, Lucentio, is posing as her instructor and has won her love. They decide to elope. The Taming of the Shrew begins with an induction, sometimes known as an explanation scene. Outside an ale tavern, Christopher Sly, a drunken beggar, is arguing with the hostess. He broke some glasses, she claims. Sly collapses as she leaves to call the authorities. Horns sound, and the hunted-for ruler arrives. He decides to perform a practical joke on Sly. He directs his servants to bring the beggar to his home and treat him as if he were a lord. To store nice clothes and jewelry. A most delicious banquet by his bed. And brave attendants near him when he wakes. Would not the beggar then forget himself? His friends all agree it will be a great joke. My lord, I warrant you we will play our part. As he shall think by our true diligence. He is no less than what we say he is. A group of actors walks in. They request to remain with the lord and play for him. He greets them but advises them not to be taken aback by the acts of the other lord in his mansion. Then he orders his page boy, Bartholomew, to find him. He desires that the boy dress as a woman. When Sly awakens, the boy will pretend to be Sly's wife, ecstatic that he has overcome his amnesia. He, will tell him that he has spent the last 7 years believing he is a beggar. Induction 2. Sly is awakened in the lord's bed. He is dressed elegantly and has attendants serving him meals. Sly immediately questions his condition. He tells them about his various roles, none of which entail being a lord. The servants put on a show, but Sly isn't convinced until they introduce him to his bride. He orders the servants to leave and orders his wife to remove his clothing. The page stops him by saying it's been 15 years, and his doctor cautioned him that any vigorous activity could trigger a relapse. The group arrives with the intention of entertaining them with a play. Sly agrees and requests that his wife sit next to him while they watch the play. Act 1, Scene 1. Padua, a public place. The scene begins with Lucentio and his servant, Tranio, conversing. Bautista Minola and his daughters, Catherine and Bianca, are discussing Lucentio's education. Hortensio and Gremio, two suitors, accompany Bianca. The men are significantly older than she is. While the two suitors argue, the girl's father tells them that while they can court Catherine, he would not allow Bianca, the youngest, to marry before her sister. The males are adamantly opposed to Katerina as a wife. She answers with violent threats. To use a three-legged stool to comb your noddle, paint your face, and use you like a fool. Tranio advises his master, Lucentio, to see the group's performance because the woman is insane. Lucentio responds that he can't take his gaze away from her sister. Bianca leaves, but Bautista informs the guys that he is seeking for a tutor for Bianca. After Katerina has left, Hortensio and Gremio continue to argue. Neither of them can imagine anyone marrying Katerina. However, the two will work together to locate someone, and Gremio promises to give the man a horse so he may start wooing. They then leave. Hortensio and Gremio's debate continues. Neither of them can imagine anyone marrying Katerina. However, the two will work together to locate someone, and Gremio promises to give the man a horse so he may start wooing. They then leave, leaving Lucio and Tranio on stage. They're talking about the two girls, notably Bianca. Lucentio has concluded he loves Bianca, but getting to her will be difficult. He and Tranio both propose that Lucentio serve as her instructor. However, because Lucentio has come to Padua to study, Tranio will have to pretend as him and attend the classes. When Lucentio's other servant, Biondello, arrives, they tell him about their plot and solicit his assistance. The three then leave the stage. Lucentio and Tranio are the only ones left on stage. They're talking about the two girls, notably Bianca. Lucentio has concluded he loves Bianca, but getting to her will be difficult. He and Tranio both propose that Lucentio serve as her instructor. However, because Lucentio has come to Padua to study, Tranio will have to pretend as him and attend the classes. When Lucentio's other servant, Biondello, arrives, they tell him about their plot and solicit his assistance. The three then leave the stage. The drama returns to Sly, who is watching the performance with his wife. The presenter asks if he likes it, and Sly says he does, but he wishes it were over so he could spend time with his wife. The page informs him that the play has only just begun. Act 1, Scene 2. Padua, before Hortensio's house. The scenario begins with a young man named Petruccio and his servant, Grumio, standing at Hortensio's door. Petruccio and Hortensio are Veronese friends. Hortensio welcomes them inside his home and asks Petruccio about his plans after opening the door. Petruccio claims to be in town hunting for a bride. He inherited his family's estates and is looking for the daughter of a wealthy man to boost his money. Hortensio sees this as a timely godsend. He wants to find a husband for Caterina so that he can marry Bianca. Hortensio warns his friend Petruccio that the woman is a shrew, but he ignores him. He is mainly concerned with the fact that she has a wealthy father. Petruccio doesn't need Hortensio to introduce him because he knows her father. As a result, Hortensio devises a scheme to disguise himself as a schoolmaster and have Petruccio introduce him as Bianca's teacher. Soon, all of the players who are changing identities will meet. Grumio transports Lucentio, who poses as a schoolmaster. Although Lucentio promises Grumio that he will promote his petition for Bianca, saying, "Whatever I read to her, I'll plead for you," he is actually courting Bianca himself. Then there's Hortensio, who had intended to masquerade as a schoolmaster but is now bringing Petruccio, who will be courting Caterina. Tranio, who is disguised as Lucentio in order to attend his studies, enters with Biondello, Petruccio's second servant, as the men are speaking. Tranio requests instructions to Bachista's house, but Grumio and Hortensio are concerned that he is another potential suitor for Bianca and try to discourage him. He informs them that if he wants to court her, Fairlida's daughter had 1,000 wooers. Tranio has been summoned by Lucentio to distract Grumio and Hortensio. Tranio persuades the suitors that they can all be friends and buys them a drink at the pub. Tranio has been summoned by Lucentio to distract Grumio and Hortensio. Tranio persuades the suitors that they can all be friends and buys them a drink at the pub. Act 2, Scene 1 Padua. A room in Bachista's house. Act 2, Scene 1 Padua. A room in Bachista's house. Caterina and Bianca begin the scene. Caterina is chasing her sister around the room with her hands bound behind her back. She demands to know who her sister chooses as a suitor. But the brawl is broken up by their father, who favors Bianca, further antagonizing Caterina. Both sisters storm off the stage, furious. Grumio enters, accompanied by Lucentio, who is dressed as a schoolmaster, and Hortensio, who is also dressed as a schoolmaster with Petruccio. Tranio, dressed as Lucentio, and Biondello, the servant, follow. The introductions begin with Petruccio, who requests to meet Caterina and introduces Hortensio to Ligio, a music instructor. Grumio then intervenes, offering Lucentio a job as a classical language instructor named Cambio. Tranio then comes forward with a gift of books and a lute and seeks to court Bianca. Bachista accepts all of the gifts but is taken aback when Petruccio suggests wooing Caterina and warns him about her age. "The more I grieve because she is not for your turn." A servant enters and assigns Lucentio, Hortensio, and Biondello to be the girls' tutors. Hortensio returns with his head hurt when Bachista and Petruccio are discussing Caterina's dowry. Caterina appears to have taken objection to his teaching style and whacked him on the head with the lute he was attempting to instruct with. This only makes Petruccio more desperate to win her over. Bachista proposes that Hortensio tutor Bianca while Caterina meets Petruccio alone. He intends to charm her by turning all of her harsh statements into sweet remarks. Petruccio addresses her as Kate, which she quickly corrects to Caterina. Kate slaps Petruccio after exchanging barbs. He holds her wrist and threatens to hit her again if she strikes him again. Then he informs her that, despite having heard negative things about her personality, he is relieved to find she is so gentle. He also informs her that he has reached an agreement with her father and that they are planning to marry. When her father comes, Petruccio informs him that he and Caterina have struck an agreement and will marry on Sunday. Despite Catherine's denials, her father believes Petruccio and signs the transaction with Gremio and Tranio as witnesses. Gremio and Tranio resume their suits for Bianca after Caterina and Petruccio leave. Bautista promises to sell her to the highest bidder. Tranio's offer is the most generous, but as the other two men leave the stage, we realize that he lied and must find a wealthy father for Lucentia. Act 3, Scene 1. Padua. Bautista's house. Bianca is a student of Lucentio and Hortensio. She decides to learn Latin with Lucentio and requests that Hortensio tune his lute. Bianca responds in gibberish Latin after Lucentio confesses his love for her and tells her who he is. She assures him that, while she does not trust him, he still has a chance. Then, after he leaves and she begins taking lessons from Hortensio, and he proclaims his love, she rejects him. Hortensio consoles himself after she leaves to prepare for her sister's wedding the next day by determining that if he can't have Bianca, there are other women available. Act 3, Scene 2. Padua. Before Bautista's house. Bautista, Gremio, Tranio, Caterina, Bianca, and Lucentio, together with servants, enter the scene first. The group is waiting for Petruccio, but he is running late. Caterina believes Petruccio has a history of seducing women and then abandoning them. Who would in haste and intends to marry at leisure. Caterina storms out, humiliated and in tears. Bianca is following her. However, before Bautista can go, Biondello arrives with news that Petruccio is on his way with a dumpy wagon and a broken-down horse. Bautista invites him to go home and change into more formal attire for the wedding. But he refuses and continues on his way to the church and Kate. Except for Lucentio and Tranio, everyone else follows. Act 3, Scene 3. Still before Bautista's house. Tranio and Lucentio are debating Lucentio's chances with Bianca. Lucentio believes that eloping is the greatest option. Then Gremio returns with a wedding report. Petruccio was unpleasant and noisy. He slapped the priest, hurled food, and cursed. When the priest offered to call off the wedding, Petruccio responded no way. The rest of the party then returns, but Petruccio whisks his new wife away before the bridal feast can begin. Everyone else continues the celebration in the absence of the groom and bride. Bautista wants to talk about Lucentio and Bianca's upcoming wedding. Act 4, Scene 1. Petruccio's country house. In order to arrive at Petruccio's house, Gremio is the first one to arrive. Tells a servant named Curtis about the trip he's just taken. Petruccio is enraged, the horses bolt, and Kate falls in the dirt. When Petruccio sees the line of servants forming to welcome him, he snaps, "Dinner." After that, he returns it, claiming the food was burned. Kate begs him to be kind with the staff since she is weak and hungry. The man claims she is deserving of nothing less. After that, he advises her to retire to her room. Afterward, Petruccio tells the audience that he intends to keep her from sleeping and eating in order to torture and eventually shatter her. He likens her to a wild falcon and believes he can train her. It's murder a wife with kindness to do this. Act 4, Scene 2. Padua. Before Bautista's house. To set the tone, Tranio and Hortensio appear on the scene. Tranio pretends to be furious when he and Lucentio see each other making out with Bianca. They both agree that they will no longer see each other, despite their feelings for one another. Tranio informs Lucentio and Bianca of the good news after Hortensio has left. After making up his mind to marry a wealthy widow, Hortensio wishes to investigate Petruccio's methods for controlling his wife, a taming school. Lucentio's father has been located, and Biondello comes over to tell them. Tranio persuades the pedant, or schoolmaster, to masquerade as his father in order to protect himself. There are no men left in his village and Tranio has to convince him that the leaders of Padua have pledged that they will kill anyone who is not one of the people of Padua. He will, however, protect him if he pretends to be his father, Vincentio. Act 4, Scene 3. A room in Petruccio's house. Gremio and Caterina take their places on stage. To no avail, Caterina's husband, Gremio, continues to avoid her requests for food and drink. Finally, she slaps him in the face and orders him to go. Meat is brought in by Petruccio and Hortensio. When Petruccio offers her some, The tailor arrives just in time for her to consume it all. Petruccio once again evades the tailor's attention by tampering with the clothing he had ordered for her. For his dear Kate, none of the fabrics or designs are good enough. So they'll have to wear nothing but their underwear to her father's place. They are supposed to leave at noon, but Petruccio reprimands her for arguing with him over the time of day and says they will leave the following day at whatever time he specifies. Act 4, Scene 4. Padua. Before Bachista's house. Tranio and the pedant take their places on stage, one is Lucentio and one is Vincentio. They rehearse with Biondello for the role. Soon after, Bachista and Lucentio, who are still dressed as Cambio the schoolmaster, walk in the door. Bachista is convinced by the pedant that Tranio's wedding is a good idea. In order to complete the arrangements, they go. After Biondello returns, he informs Lucentio that Bianca has been arranged to marry him. The elopement is all set. Act 4, Scene 5. A public road. Several servants and Petruccio's wife, Caterina, arrive. The journey to her father's house has finally come to an end. Despite Caterina's claims that it is noon and Petruccio's claims that the moon is full, she agrees to anything he says in order to keep the group moving. As he finally quits debating about the time of day, he makes her concede that Vincentio is a woman when he shows up. Taming her involves making her agree with him no matter what he says, good or bad. Seeing as he will be visiting his son Lucentio and meeting his new bride in Padua, Vincent accepts the group's invitation to join him there. Then, off to the side, Hortensio declares that he is confident in marrying the widow and that, if she is froward, he will utilize Petruccio's techniques. Act 5, Scene 1. Padua. Before Lucentio's house. Bianca and Lucentio's elopement is in full swing, thanks to Biondello's haste to the priest. Following the arrivals of Petruccio and his family are Caterina, Veneto, and Grumiola. Vincentio is accused by the pedant of attempting to imitate him. As the confusion increases, there is a scuffle, especially when Biondello fails to recognize the true Vincentio. The pedant calls for Tranio and Bachista to help with the man who claims to be Vincentio. He gets angrier as Tranio keeps the ruse continuing, and Vincentio tries to expose Tranio in the process. Vincentio is taken away by the police, but before they can, Lucentio and Bianca return. Tranio, Biondello, and the pedant flee as the real Lucentio bows before his father. All of Bachista's identity ruses will be exposed by Lucentio soon. The prank pulled on Bachista and Vincentio angers them, but they decide to put it out of their minds for the time being. Their vengeance, however, is already planned. Except for Kate and Petruccio, everyone has departed. Despite her curiosity, Petruccio instructs her to first kiss him before she can join the rest of the group. She initially refuses, but when he orders her to come home, she caves in and obeys. Act 5, Scene 2. Padua. Lucentio's house. Dinner is the setting for this scenario, which opens with all of the characters. Lucentio is throwing a party to honor the recent marriages. Hortensio and his widowed wife Hortensio. In response to the widow's remark that your husband, being burdened with a shrew, estimates my husband's grief by his woe, Kate reacts with apprehension. The males try to get the ladies to fight, but Bianca intervenes and persuades the women to retire as well. Petruccio makes a wager because the guys don't believe that Kate has been tamed by Petruccio. The winner will be the one who summons their wives first. Seconds after calling for Bianca, the servant returns to tell Lucentio she is too busy and will not be able to arrive at the meeting. Then Hortensio's wife thinks he's joking and tells him to come to her instead. Lastly, Petruccio tells Kate, whereas the other two men ask their wives, to meet him at his house. She bursts into the room and asks him what he plans to do. Upon inquiry as to their whereabouts, she replies that they are huddled around the fire having a conversation. As long as he sends her to bring the people over, she will do so. Kate will be back soon, bringing her two other spouses with her. However, Petruccio has Kate admonish the other wives for their lack of marital responsibilities. When Petruccio responds, "Kiss me, Kate," Hortensio and Lucentio are left scratching their heads, wondering what could possibly go wrong. Caterina, the shrew of the play. If you're trying to get her attention, you're going to get slapped in the face. Her sharp tongue and quick wit mask a deep fear and resentment toward her sweeter sister, Bianca. Even though she despises the notion of getting married, when she is unable to keep Petruccio away, she gives in to his charms and attempts to make their union work out. Petruccio, a Verona native who has traveled to Padua in search of a wealthy wife. He is loud, brash, and rough to the point of becoming obnoxious. Petruccio, on the other hand, is a quick-witted and eccentric character, albeit prone to alcoholism. The moment he finds out about the existence of Katerina, he sets out to tame her like a falcon. As a result, Petruchio refuses to serve her any food. He won't let her sleep since the sheets aren't up to snuff. Clothes are next since the tailors do not use the best supplies. He does all of this while professing his undying devotion to her. Bachista's youngest daughter, Bianca. Beautiful and calm, she is. Everyone who sees her is interested in courting her, but she has to wait until her older sister, Katerina, gets married before she can get married. She disobeys her father by agreeing to elope with Lucentio, which is unusual for someone as humble as her. Bachista, the father of Katerina and Bianca. Although he is one of Padua's wealthiest men, his daughter Katerina's shrewd personality prevents anyone from marrying her, even with her father's enormous dowry. To him, Katerina has to get married first. Lucentio, a young student. The moment he steps foot in Padua, Italy, to begin his college career, he meets Bianca and falls head over heels. When he learns that Bachista is on the hunt for classical language teachers for his daughters, he persuades Gremio to introduce him as Cambio, a classical language teacher. When his plan is exposed, he finds himself on the wrong side of both Bianca and her father's families. Tranio, Lucentio's servant, who poses as Lucentio while he plays the schoolmaster. Tranio is witty, clever, and able to concoct lies in a flash. As Lucentio, he also negotiates with Bachista to get Bianca to marry him. Hortensio, one of the suitors for Bianca. He tries to win her over by pretending to be a music teacher, but in the end, Lucentio is the one who ends up with her. As part of the plan, Petruchio introduces Baptist to his best buddy, so that Baptist can marry Katerina and eliminate Katerina as a barrier. In the aftermath of his wife's death, Bianca marries a widow. Gremio, although he and Hortensio are much older than Bianca, they both court her. Envisioning that he's Cambio, he hires Lucentio as a tutor. Biondello, Lucentio's servant who pretends to be Tranio's servant when he's posing as Lucentio. Lucentio and Bianca's elopement is made possible thanks to his help. Grumio, another of Lucentio's servants. While he's stumbling around, he provides a light-hearted moment. Biography of William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, 1564–1616, was a renowned writer from both England and other parts of the world. In the year 1564, he was born in Stratford-upon-Avon to a wealthy family. One of 8 children, he was the eldest in a rich household. Few details regarding his life have been uncovered. 1582 saw him wed an 8-year-old woman named Anne Hathaway, whom he had never met. After that, they had a daughter, Suzanne, and twins, Hamlet and Judith. Until 1592, he stays out of the limelight, but in London, he becomes active in the worlds of writing and acting. Venus and Adonis and the Rape of Lucrece, 2 of his later pieces, were published shortly after that. Several of his plays were staged to great acclaim. At the Globe, he became a shareholder. He returns to Stanford in the final years of his life and dies there in 1616. Shakespeare's 37 plays are grouped into 4 categories: history plays, comedies, tragedies, and romantic comedies. Shakespeare's most popular works are Henry IV, Richard III, Romeo and Juliet, Taming the Shrew, The Comedy of Errors, Two Gentlemen of Verona, Hamlet, Othello, Measure for Measure, Winter's Tale, and The Taming of the Shrew. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.